You know that feeling, right? That specific golden hour feeling of a Sunday evening. The week's chaos has finally exhaled, and the world seems to be slowing down, softening at the edges. That's precisely the atmosphere inside the car. It's not just a vehicle. It's a capsule, a tiny, mobile island of peace carrying us through the fading light. I'm behind the wheel. Sarah, 42 years old. This drive is a ritual, a thread that has stitched together the chapters of my life. The leather of the steering wheel is familiar under my hands, worn smooth in all the right places. My favorite playlist, a mix of 90s acoustic covers and some modern indie folk, is playing just loud enough to fill the space, but not so loud that it interrupts thought. The melody is a gentle hum, a soundtrack to contentment. In the passenger seat, my purse is tipped over, spilling its contents. A half-eaten granola bar still in its wrapper, a tube of lipstick that rolled under the seat last week and has only now been rediscovered, and a crumpled receipt from the gas station we stopped at 20 minutes ago. It's the beautiful, unglamorous mess of everyday life. But the true heart of the scene is in the backseat. My daughter, Lily, 7 years old. She's tucked into her booster seat, a fortress of pillows and her favorite, fraying blue blanket. The golden sunlight streams through the window, catching the fine, flyaway hairs that have escaped her braids, creating a kind of halo around her head. She's not on a tablet. She's not watching a screen. She's immersed in that profound, imaginative world children construct for themselves. She's holding a conversation between two of her plastic horses, her voice a soft, serious murmur weaving between the notes of the music. "No, Sparkle Hoof," she whispers to the pink one with the glittery mane. "We can't cross the river yet. It's too deep." Princess Moonbeam says we have to wait for the magic bridge to appear. I catch her eye in the rearview mirror. She looks up, her big, brown eyes meeting mine for a second, and she offers a small, secret smile before diving back into her epic equine narrative. My heart does that thing it does, that tight, overwhelming squeeze of pure, unadulterated love. This is what it's all about. Outside, the world is painting itself in the colors of dusk. We've left the sprawling suburbs behind and are now on the old state route, a two-lane road that cuts through rolling farmland and patches of dense, shadowy forest. It's a road I've traveled 1,000 times. I know every curve, every dilapidated barn, every mailbox shaped like a miniature barn. I passed my driver's test on this road. I drove it, white-knuckled and nervous with my brand-new license, to see my high school boyfriend. I drove it back, heartbroken and blasting angsty music, a few years later. I drove it, my stomach a bundle of nerves and excitement, to tell my parents I was pregnant. This road is a timeline of my life. The scent in the car is a familiar cocktail. The warm, comforting aroma of coffee from my travel mug, black, 2 sugars, the way I've taken it since college, mingling with the faint, sweet smell of Lily's apple juice box and the clean, linen scent of the car's interior. It's the smell of us, of safety, of home. I take a slow, deep breath, feeling the tension of the work week. The deadlines, the emails, the endless meetings, finally begin to unspool from my shoulders. My mind is already ahead of us at my parents' house. I can already see the warm, yellow light glowing from the kitchen window. I can smell my mother's pot roast, the one she always makes, simmering with carrots and onions until the meat is fall-apart tender. I can hear the low rumble of my father's laugh from his armchair, the familiar creak of the floorboard in the hallway. I'm thinking about the simple, profound joy of watching Lily run into their open arms, about the way my mom will already have a plate of her infamous chocolate chip cookies waiting, the edges just a little too crispy because she always forgets they're in the oven. I'm looking forward to the easy silence that falls between my dad and me as we do the dishes later, a comfortable quiet built on decades of love and understanding. Everything is perfect. The car purrs steadily beneath me, a reliable machine doing its job. The music swells softly. My daughter is safe, happy, and lost in a world of magic horses and princesses. We are encased in a bubble of tranquility, hurtling through the beautiful, honeyed light toward a place of unconditional love and warmth. There is not a single cloud in the sky, nor in my mind. The first hint was so subtle, so utterly mundane, that it barely registered. It was a flicker in the periphery, a shift in the light pattern dancing across my dashboard. I had just navigated a long, lazy S-curve that cut through a thicket of pine trees, a stretch of road that always momentarily swallowed the daylight. As we emerged back into the open, the golden hour sun was now directly in my rearview mirror, a brilliant, blinding orb of orange. I reached up with a practiced hand and flicked the little tab at the bottom of the mirror, engaging the anti-glare function. The world in the mirror instantly softened into muted, shadowy tones. And that's when I saw it. Or rather, them. A pair of headlights, still some distance back, but now visible in the dimmed reflection. SUV, tall and boxy, dark-colored, maybe black, maybe a deep navy. It was hard to tell with the sun and the tinted mirror. It was just a car. Nothing more. This was a state route. People drove on it. My mind, still luxuriating in its peaceful haze, filed it away under normal, unimportant. I continued on, humming along to a familiar tune, glancing back at Lily in the mirror. She was now using her finger to draw shapes on the fog her breath had left on the window. A few minutes later, I signaled and turned onto the longer, more monotonous stretch of Route 47, a road flanked by endless fields of corn, already harvested down to stubbly, pale yellow stalks. It was a straight shot for nearly 10 miles. I settled in, adjusting my grip on the wheel, and I noticed it again, the SUV. It was closer now. Not tailgating, but definitely within a consistent distance. Okay, I thought someone else is making good time. Maybe they were also heading home, also eager for a Sunday dinner. I unconsciously eased my foot on the accelerator, just a touch, bringing the car from 55 to about 58 miles per hour. The action was automatic, a driver's casual test. I kept my eyes fixed ahead, but my focus was now split, a part of me monitoring the reflection in the dimmed mirror. I counted. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. The headlights of the SUV grew marginally larger. They were matching my speed. Exactly. A tiny, cold seed of unease planted itself in my gut. Don't be ridiculous, Sarah, I chided myself. Asterisk, you're being paranoid. It's a wide-open road. He's probably just on cruise control, same as you were. Asterisk. To prove it to myself, I did the opposite. I lifted my foot off the gas, just a fraction, allowing the car to coast down to 53, 52 miles per hour. The act felt deliberate, a violation of the unspoken rules of the road. I held my breath, my eyes glued to the mirror. The response wasn't immediate. For a glorious 3 seconds, the distance between us began to grow. The SUV's form shrank slightly. Relief started to wash over me. See? Coincidence. Just another. Then, the 2 pinpricks of light flared, brighter and larger, as the SUV closed the gap I had just created. It didn't speed up aggressively. It was a calm, precise correction. It slid back into its previous position, maintaining that same constant and now utterly menacing distance. My mouth went dry. The peaceful bubble of the car suddenly felt fragile, thin. The folksy music from the speakers now seemed dissonant and naive. The warmth of the setting sun felt invasive, like a spotlight. Why? The question screamed silently in my head. Why match my speed? Why not just pass me? There was no oncoming traffic. The left lane was a wide, empty, black ribbon inviting him to go around. But he didn't. He stayed. A silent, dark presence. This was no longer a car. It was a shape, an intention. I tried to get a look at the driver, but the combination of the low sun behind it and its own tinted windshield turned the front of the vehicle into an impenetrable black void. There was no silhouette, no face. It was just nothingness, a blank mask following me. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I forced myself to exhale, to try and act normal for Lily's sake. I couldn't let her sense this sudden, ice-cold fear that was now coursing through my veins. This was my burden. This was the first crack in our perfect evening, a hairline fracture in the glass, and I alone could see it. The calm was shattered, replaced by a silent, screaming vigilance. This was no longer a journey home. It was a test. The next 5 minutes were an eternity, measured in the frantic, hammering rhythm of my own heart. My entire world had shrunk down to 2 points: the road ahead and the dark, silent shape in the rearview mirror. The cozy familiarity of the car's interior had evaporated, replaced by a feeling of terrifying exposure. We were in a glass box being studied. I was performing a frantic internal calculus. Maybe it's an unmarked police car? But it didn't have the right look. The grille was all wrong. Maybe it's someone lost, following my taillights? But they'd have no reason to match my speed so precisely, to close the gap every time it widened. This was intentional. This was focused. My eyes flicked between the road and the mirror so rapidly it was giving me a headache. The anti-glare function, which had once softened the world, now felt like it was casting everything in a sinister, greenish twilight. The SUV was a predator, and my dimmed mirror was its murky habitat. I tried a few more feeble tests, my movements jerky with nervous energy. I tapped my brakes lightly, just enough for the red lights to flash, pretending to adjust my position. The SUV immediately backed off a car length, a calculated, professional response. It wasn't startled. It was adaptive. I signaled a lane change and drifted slightly into the empty left lane for a moment before curving back. The SUV mirrored the movement exactly, a ghostly, silent dance partner. Each experiment only confirmed the terrifying reality. We were being followed, hunted, and through it all, I was desperately trying to maintain a facade of normalcy for the world inside the car. The music still played. The coffee smell was now cloying, nauseating. I could feel a fine sheen of cold sweat on my upper lip. I forced my shoulders to relax, my grip to loosen on the wheel, all while every primal instinct screamed at me to floor it. I must have made a sound, a sharp, involuntary intake of breath, a tiny gasp swallowed by the music. Or perhaps a mother's fear is a frequency only her children can hear, a silent vibration of panic that resonates in their very bones. Because that's when it happened. The plastic horses in the back seat fell silent. I saw her in the mirror. Lily had stopped her play. She was sitting perfectly still, her blue blanket pooled in her lap. Her head was cocked slightly, not looking at me, but looking out her own window, at the reflection of the headlights that had been our constant shadow. Her little brow was furrowed in concentration. The innocent, imaginative light in her eyes had been replaced by something else. A dawning, quiet apprehension. The folksy singer on the radio finished a song, and for a split second, there was dead air before the next track began. In that pocket of silence, her voice came. It wasn't a cry. It wasn't even a scared whimper. It was a whisper. Small, clear, and laced with a terror so pure it felt like a shard of ice plunged directly into my heart. Mommy! The word was a hook, pulling me out of my spiraling panic and into a terrifying new reality. Her fear made my fear real. It made it official. I swallowed, my throat sandpaper dry. I tried to make my voice sound light, casual. Yes, sweetie? She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the side mirror, on the twin points of light reflected there. Her whisper dropped even lower, becoming almost inaudible, forcing me to strain every nerve to hear it. Mommy? She repeated, and this time her voice trembled. I think someone's following us. The world stopped. Those 6 words, spoken in the tiny, vulnerable voice of my child, shattered any last pretense of coincidence, any last vestige of denial. This wasn't my paranoia. This wasn't adult anxiety. This was a child's raw, unfiltered instinct recognizing danger. Her alarm bell was ringing, and it was deafening. In that moment, the dynamic in the car shifted irrevocably. I was no longer just a scared woman. I was a mother whose child was afraid. And that changed everything. The cold fear in my veins didn't vanish, but it was instantly forged in the fire of that protective instinct into something harder, sharper, and more determined. Her whisper was the alarm, and now I had to answer it. I had to look. The air in the car became thick, heavy, almost impossible to breathe. Lily's whisper hung between us, a specter of confirmed dread. The cheerful indie folk song from the speakers felt like a grotesque joke, a soundtrack from a life we had suddenly been ripped away from. I had to force my hand to reach out and fumble for the volume knob, my fingers numb and clumsy, turning it all the way down. The resulting silence was somehow louder, more oppressive, filled only by the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the frantic drumbeat of my own heart. I could feel Lily's eyes on the back of my head, wide and scared, waiting for me to fix it, to tell her she was silly, that it was just her imagination. But I couldn't, because she wasn't silly. She was right. My mind raced, a frantic animal trapped in a cage of its own making. Asterisk, don't look scared. Don't look scared. For her. You have to be calm for her. Asterisk, I drew in a shaky breath, trying to steady my voice, to inject a warmth into it that I absolutely did not feel. It's okay, baby, I said, the words sounding hollow and thin even to my own ears. Let mommy check, all right? I'm sure it's nothing. The reassurance was for her, but the action that followed was purely for me. I needed to see. I needed to know for certain what we were dealing with. The not knowing was a torture worse than any reality. The act of turning my head felt monumental, like moving through syrup. Every muscle in my neck was tight with resistance. My eyes were fixed on the road ahead, but my entire consciousness was focused on that small, rectangular portal into the world behind us. The rearview mirror. I began the slow, deliberate motion. It felt like a scene in a horror movie, the agonizingly slow pan toward the inevitable monster. First, my eyes left the road and found the mirror's frame. Then, they focused on the reflected image of the back seat. Lily's pale, worried face, her grip tight on her blue blanket. I offered her the weakest, most strained smile I have ever mustered. It was a lie, and I think she knew it. Then, my gaze continued its journey, moving past the interior of our car, past the rear windshield, and out into the world beyond. The setting sun was directly behind the SUV, framing it in a hellish, brilliant aura of fire orange. It was a silhouette, a cut-out black shape against the blinding light. But it was closer, so much closer than it had been just a minute ago. It filled the mirror. The details I could make out were worse than I could have imagined. It was a large, black SUV, something like a Chevrolet Tahoe or a Ford Expedition. It was clean, almost aggressively so, no mud splatter, no dust. It looked professional, impersonal. And then I saw the grille, a massive, dark chrome mouth, seeming to snarl in the reflected light. My eyes, desperate for any information, any clue, scanned upward, trying to pierce the deep, black tint of the windshield. For a terrifying second, I thought I saw nothing, just an abyss, a void where a driver should be. But then, as the road dipped slightly, the angle of the sun changed by a fraction of a degree. A sliver of light pierced the tint, and I saw him, not a full face, not features, just the faintest impression of a shape. A dark baseball cap pulled low, the sharp, straight line of a pair of sunglasses, even in this fading light. And below that, the grim, unsmiling line of a mouth. It was just a glimpse, a flash of a presence, but it was enough. It was human. It was deliberate. It was focused entirely on us. The confirmation was a physical blow. A cold fist clenched around my lungs, squeezing the air out of me. My blood seemed to turn to ice water in my veins. Every worst-case scenario, every headline I'd ever skimmed and tried to forget, came flooding into my mind in a violent, terrifying wave. This was real. This was happening. My eyes, wide with panic, snapped back to the road ahead. I had been staring for only 2 or 3 seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. The world outside, the cornfields, the sky, the road, seemed to sharpen into hyper-realistic focus, every detail screamingly clear and yet utterly meaningless. I couldn't speak. I couldn't offer Lily another hollow platitude. The truth was sitting in my chest like a block of ice. The person in that car was not lost. They were not a friendly stranger. They were a threat. And we were alone on a long, deserted stretch of road with nowhere to run. The calm mother was gone. In her place was raw, primal fear. We were prey, and the predator was right on our tail. The image of that grim, unsmiling mouth beneath the sunglasses was burned onto the back of my eyelids. Pray. The word echoed in the silent, suffocating cabin of the car. I was prey. My daughter was prey. The thought was so visceral, so degrading, that it triggered something deep and ancient within me, a circuit that bypassed all conscious thought. The cold block of fear in my chest didn't melt. It crystallized. It sharpened into a diamond-hard point of pure, unadulterated purpose. The paralyzing terror was still there, buzzing in the background like a trapped fly, but it was now drowned out by a louder, more powerful frequency. The primal instinct to protect my child. A strange, almost supernatural calm descended over me. My vision tunneled. The folksy music was gone. The smell of coffee was gone. The worry about the pot roast was a million miles away. Every ounce of my being, every sense, every neuron was laser-focused on a single objective: get Lily to safety. I chanced another glance in the rearview mirror, but this time it wasn't a look of fear. It was an assessment, a calculation. My eyes met Lily's. She was watching me, her lower lip trembling, her whole world hinging on what she saw in my face. I could not let her see the prey. I forced my features to soften. I unclenched my jaw and willed a calmness I did not feel into my expression. My voice, when it came out, was low, steady, and surprisingly firm. It was not the voice of the woman who had been gasping in panic seconds before. It was the voice of Commander Mom. "Okay, Honey Bear," I said, using her old baby nickname, a touchstone of absolute safety. "I see him. You were right. Thank you for telling me. That was so brave." The effect was immediate. Some of the tension in her tiny shoulders released. She had been heard. Her warning had been validated. She wasn't crazy. She was my brave girl. "Now listen to me," I continued, my eyes flicking between her reflection and the road. My tone was even instructional, like I was telling her how to tie her shoes. "We're going to play a quiet game, okay? A super-secret spy game. I need you to be my very best spy. Can you do that?" She gave a tiny, hesitant nod, her eyes wide. "Good girl. The first rule of the game is no more looking out the back window. Your job is to look right here at me in this mirror. Can you see me?" She nodded again, her gaze locking onto mine in the glass. "Perfect. You're doing great. Now, I need you to put your seatbelt on one more time. Give it a big, strong click for me. Double-check it." I watched as her small hands fumbled with the belt, pulling the strap taut until it clicked securely. The simple, normal sound was profoundly reassuring. It was an action of control in a situation spiraling out of control. "My job," I said, my voice still that steady, reassuring murmur, "is to drive us to a safe place, a place with lots of people. I know right where to go. You don't need to worry about a thing. Your job is to be my brave spy and stay quiet and calm. Can you do that job for me?" "Yes, Mommy," she whispered, her voice a little stronger now. She had a mission. She had a role. I had given her a framework to contain her terror, and she had clung to it. Inside, I was a storm. My mind was mapping the next 10 miles with a clarity I never knew I possessed. The gas station, Big Mike's truck stop and convenience mart. It was about 7 miles ahead, just past the old Miller farm. It was always open. It was always busy with truckers. There were lights, cameras, people. It was an oasis. I had a destination. I had a plan. The paralyzing fear had been metabolized into fuel. The prey was gone. In its place was a mother, a force of nature, and I would use every ounce of my cunning and every memory of this road to lose the predator in my rearview mirror or outrun him to a sanctuary. I took one last, deep breath, my hand settling firmly on the wheel at 9 and 3. The tremor was gone. My knuckles were still white, but now it was with determination, not fear. The game was on. With Lily now anchored by her spy mission, my mind, operating on this new, terrifying frequency of hyperclarity, became a supercomputer cross-referencing a lifetime of memories with a digital map. The panicked, flighty thoughts were gone. This was cold, hard calculation. I cannot go to my parents' house. The thought was absolute, a non-negotiable commandment. To lead this threat, this poison, to their doorstep was unthinkable. Their quiet, trusting neighborhood, their house with its flimsy screen door and the welcome mat that literally said, "Welcome." It would be a trap. For them and for us. I pictured my father's confused face, my mother's fear. No, that path was closed. The GPS on my dashboard was useless. It would only tell me the fastest route to my predetermined destination. Couldn't think. Couldn't strategize. It didn't know the secrets of this land. But I did. I had grown up here. I had learned to drive on these back roads. My dad patiently guiding me through every dirt path and dead end. I had explored them on my bike as a kid, getting gloriously lost and always finding my way home. This wasn't just a road to me. It was a living, breathing network I knew by heart. My eyes stayed glued to the road, but in my mind's eye, I was pulling up a map I hadn't consciously studied in 20 years. The straight shot of Route 47 was a trap. It offered no turns, no options, just a long, exposed runway for him to follow me. I needed a shortcut, a deviation he wouldn't expect. And then I remembered. Carter's Crossing. It wasn't a real town, just a name locals gave to a forgotten intersection about 3 miles up. A narrow, poorly paved county road, CC-19, broke off to the right, cutting a diagonal shortcut through abandoned farmland before eventually looping back to rejoin Route 47 a few miles later, just a half-mile from the truck stop. It was a terrible road, potholed and lonely, used mostly by farmers during harvest. No one took it unless they had to. Its entrance was partially hidden by an overgrown thicket of scrub trees. It was perfect. It was a risk, of course. If he knew about it, if he was local, I'd be leading us down an even more isolated path. But his car, that clean, impersonal, city-style SUV, suggested otherwise. This was a gamble I had to take. I was playing the odds with the only currency I had: intimate knowledge. The plan formed in an instant, a series of steps as clear as a military maneuver. 1. Do not signal. Do not slow down prematurely. Do nothing to indicate my intention. 2. Time the approach. The turn was just after a slight rise in the road. I had to use that micro-moment when my car would dip out of his line of sight. 3. Commit completely. It was a sharp turn onto a rough road. I would have to brake hard and turn fast the second I was over the rise. 4. Disappear. Once on CC-19, I would drive without headlights for as long as I dared, using the lingering dusk to see, hoping the trees would swallow us whole before he realized where we'd gone. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was the only card I had to play. I checked the mirror. The SUV was still there, a constant, menacing shadow. My hands were steady on the wheel. The rise in the road was coming up. I could see it, a gentle crest about a quarter-mile ahead. "Okay, spy," I said, my voice still eerily calm. "Things might get a little bumpy for a second. It's all part of the plan. I need you to hold on tight to your blanket and be super brave for just a little bit longer. Can you do that?" I saw her grip the blue fabric tightly in her little fists. "I'm brave, Mommy," she whispered, her voice small but firm. The crest was 50 yards away. My heart was a trip hammer. 30 yards. I took a final, steadying breath. This was it. Memory versus menace. I was about to bet our lives on a forgotten road I hadn't driven since I was 17. The rise was right in front of us. The car began its upward climb. Time to disappear. The world tilted as the car crested the small rise. For one breathtaking second, we were airborne, weightless, the headlights pointing at the violet evening sky. In that suspended moment, the SUV vanished from my rearview mirror, hidden by the apex of the hill. Now, I didn't think. I acted. My right foot stomped on the brake, not a panicked slam, but a firm, decisive pressure. The car nosedived toward the asphalt as we hit the downward slope. The tires protested with a sharp chirp, the force throwing us against our seatbelts. I heard a small gasp from the back seat, but no cry. Lily was being her brave spy. My left hand flicked the turn signal off. I'd instinctively turned it on out of a lifetime of habit, as my right hand wrenched the steering wheel hard to the right. The car obeyed, lurching violently off the smooth blacktop and onto the ragged mouth of County Road 19. It was like leaving a runway and driving into a nightmare. The transition was brutal. The car bucked and shuddered as its tires hit the broken, potholed pavement. A deep thump-thump-thump reverberated through the chassis, the sound jarringly loud in the tense silence. Gravel and dirt spat up, peppering the undercarriage. My eyes were glued to the path ahead, a narrow tunnel of cracked asphalt choked on both sides by skeletal trees and overgrown weeds that scraped against the sides of the car like bony fingers. The fading dusk provided just enough light to see the road was a minefield of potholes and eroded washouts. My left hand found the headlight switch. I took a deep breath and turned them off. Darkness. It was instantaneous and absolute. The world outside the windshield dissolved into a murky soup of deep blues and black shadows. The only light was the dull, eerie glow of the instrument panel on my face. I was driving blind, by memory and by feel, guided by the faint pale ribbon of the road snaking through the encroaching darkness. I strained every sense, my body tense, listening, waiting for the sound I dreaded most. How long would it take him? 5 seconds? 10? Would he simply blow past the turn, missing it completely? Or would he? There. A brilliant, sweeping lance of light cut through the trees behind us. It wasn't the focused beam of headlights coming straight down the road. It was a wide, searching arc. He had overshot the turn. He had slammed on his brakes. And now he was reversing, his high beams slicing through the forest like a scythe as he frantically looked for where we'd gone. The beams swept across the road behind us, illuminating the thicket at the entrance for a second before moving on. He hadn't seen the turn yet. He was looking for a driveway, a pull-off. I pressed the accelerator, the car lurching forward over the uneven ground. I was driving too fast for the conditions, the car swerving to avoid a deep pothole I only saw at the last second. Every bump jolted my spine. The noise was tremendous. Crunching gravel, scraping branches, the suspension groaning in protest. I was making a racket, a beacon of sound in the silent countryside. Then the searching beams behind us stopped. They focused. They had found the break in the tree line. A second later, the world behind us exploded in light. Twin suns erupted at our back, flooding the interior of our car with a harsh, blinding radiance. The SUV's headlights, now on high beam, filled every mirror, eliminating every shadow, turning the night into day. He had found us, and he was coming. The game was over. He was on the dirt road now. The difference between his vehicle and mine became terrifyingly apparent. Where my sedan bucked and wallowed over the terrain, his SUV, higher and built for it, absorbed the bumps with ease. He was gaining, fast. The narrow road meant there was no room to pass, but he didn't need to. He just needed to get close enough, to force me off the road, to trap me. I pushed the car harder, my hands slick with sweat on the wheel, my heart hammering against my ribs. The headlights behind us grew larger, brighter, consuming the entire rearview mirror. I could no longer see his grille, just a blinding, overwhelming wall of white light, swallowing our shadow, swallowing us. He was right on my bumper. The roar of his engine drowned out the sound of my own. I was outmatched, outrun. My desperate gamble on a back road had failed, and I had only succeeded in leading us into a darker, more isolated trap. The safe glow of the truck stop felt a million miles away. We were alone in the dark, with a predator who had just caught our scent. And he was closing in for the kill. The blinding white light from the SUV filled the car, erasing our shadows, turning the interior into a sterile, terrifying fishbowl. I could feel the rumble of his engine through my seat, a vibration that seemed to shake my very bones. He was so close that if I tapped my brakes for even a second, he'd slam into us. The old sedan protested as I pushed it beyond its limits, the engine whining, the tires skittering dangerously on the loose gravel at the edge of the ragged pavement. Every pothole was a potential catastrophe, a chance to blow a tire or snap an axle and bring this nightmare to a sudden, violent end. The overgrown branches whipped and screeched against the sides of the car, sounding like claws trying to tear their way in. Lily was silent in the back, a silence more frightening than any scream. I knew she was watching the blinding light, feeling the menace of the giant vehicle eating up the road behind us. And then, like a miracle, the road curved. CC-19 finally began its loop back toward the main highway. Through a break in the trees, I saw it. Not heaven, but the next best thing, the glow. It was a hazy, orange-pink aura staining the low clouds in the distance. The lights of the truck stop. It was still over a mile away, but it was there. A beacon. The sight injected a fresh, desperate burst of adrenaline into my system. I wasn't lost in a nightmare anymore. I had a destination, a finish line. The SUV sensed the change too. He knew this little game of cat and mouse on the back road was about to end. As the road widened slightly, preparing to merge back onto Route 47, he made his move. He swung out into the oncoming lane. Empty, thank God, and pulled up alongside me. For a horrifying moment, we were parallel. My humble sedan dwarfed by his hulking, black machine. I refused to look. I kept my eyes locked forward, on the glow, on the hope. But in my peripheral vision, I could see the dark, tinted window of the passenger side. A blank, impersonal slate. I felt a primal terror that the window would power down, that I would see a face, a weapon. Instead, he hit the gas. The SUV surged forward with a deep-throated roar, cutting sharply in front of me, forcing me to stand on the brakes. My car skidded, tires screaming, filling the air with the smell of burnt rubber. He was trying to force me off the road, to block me, to stop me from reaching the sanctuary of the lights. But his aggression was a mistake. Put him ahead of me, and it lit a fire under me. The merge onto Route 47 was a chaotic, sliding mess. He was ahead, but I was fighting now. I swerved around him, my car lurching, and floored the accelerator. The main road felt like glass after the dirt track. The truck stop was now just a half-mile away. I could see the individual lights, the shapes of the big rigs parked in rows. He was right behind me again, but it was different now. This was a straight shot, a final sprint. It was no longer a pursuit. It was a race. I didn't care about speed limits, about red lights, about anything. I focused on the large, brightly lit sign. Big Mike's Truck Stop, Fuel, Food, 24/7. I aimed for the heart of it. Not the gas pumps, but the main building. The convenience store with its huge, plate glass windows, blazing with fluorescent light. I didn't signal. I didn't slow down. I just wrenched the wheel and shot across the parking lot, my tires bouncing over the curb with a jarring thud. I didn't aim for a parking space. I aimed for the door. At the last possible second, I slammed on the brakes, coming to a screeching, crooked halt directly in front of the main entrance, my headlights illuminating the posters for cheap pizza and energy drinks. I was so close to the glass door that I could see the surprised face of a trucker inside holding a coffee pot. I killed the engine. The silence was deafening. I whirled around in my seat. The black SUV had stopped about 50 yards back, idling near the entrance to the lot, a dark stain against the vibrant, garish lights of the truck stop. It was hesitating. It was exposed. We were out of the dark. We were in a pool of light, surrounded by people. We had reached the refuge. "Stay down, Lily," I commanded, my voice a harsh whisper as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers finally remembering how to dial 911. My eyes never left the dark shape of the SUV, waiting to see what it would do next. The race was over. The confrontation was about to begin. The 911 operator's voice was a calm, robotic anchor in the storm of my panic. 911, what is your emergency? My words tumbled out in a rushed, breathless jumble. My eyes locked on the SUV idling at the edge of the light pool. I'm at Big Mike's Truck Stop on Route 47. A black SUV has been following me for miles. He tried to run me off the road. He's right there in the parking lot. Please, send someone now. I have my little girl with me. I gave the make, the model, the license plate number I'd seared into my memory. The operator told me to stay on the line, to stay in the locked car, that a unit was en route. The entire world had narrowed to the space between my car and that dark vehicle. The bustling normalcy of the truck stop, the hiss of air brakes, the distant laughter of a group of drivers, the chime of the door opening, felt like a surreal dream happening on the other side of a soundproof wall. Then, the driver's side door of the SUV opened. My breath hitched. I gripped my phone like a weapon. "He's getting out," I hissed to the operator. A figure emerged, but it wasn't the hulking, menacing shape I'd imagined. It was a woman. She was tall, dressed in practical dark jeans and a jacket, her hands held up in a universal gesture of, "I mean no harm." The baseball cap I'd glimpsed was gone, revealing a practical, shortcut hairstyle. She took a few tentative steps toward my car, her expression not one of aggression, but of profound apology and concern. This wasn't right. This was a trick. It had to be. I rolled my window down a single, defiant inch. "Stay back," I yelled, my voice cracking with the strain. "The police are on their way." The woman stopped immediately, her hands still raised. "I am so sorry," she called out, her voice clear and laced with genuine distress. "Please, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. You followed me. You chased me." I screamed back, the fear turning into raw, furious adrenaline. "Your brake light," she shouted back, her words coming out in a desperate rush. "Your left rear brake light. It's faulty. It's not just out, it's shorting. It's flickering on and off randomly, like a strobe light. I'm a mechanic. I was driving back from a job. I saw it and I was trying to get your attention." My mind went blank. The world tilted on its axis. The terrifying signals, the flashing high beams I'd interpreted as aggression, were her trying to get me to notice her. The way she'd matched my speed was her trying to stay close enough to eventually wave me down. My sudden, panicked turn onto the back road had forced her to follow more aggressively, her own concern growing at my erratic behavior. "I was honking. I was flashing my lights," she continued, her voice pleading. "When you suddenly turned off onto that dirt road, I got really worried. I thought you were having a medical event or something. I just wanted to make sure you were okay and tell you about your light. I didn't know how else to get you to stop. I'm so sorry." The truth landed like a physical weight. The monstrous, faceless predator dissolved into a concerned, apologetic woman standing under the harsh fluorescent lights of a truck stop. The terrifying pursuit had been a tragic, horrifying comedy of errors. My fear had written a narrative of malice onto a canvas of good intentions. The relief was so immense it was nauseating. I slumped against the steering wheel, the strength draining from my body. The 911 operator's voice, tiny and tinny from the phone on the seat, asked, "Ma'am? Ma'am, are you still there? What's happening?" I couldn't answer. I just started to cry, great heaving sobs of release. The monster was gone, and in its place was a stranger who had, in the worst way possible, just tried to help. The arrival of the police was a blur of spinning red and blue lights that painted the sides of the big rigs, turning the parking lot into a disco of authority. 2 officers approached cautiously, their hands resting on their belts, their eyes scanning between my tear-streaked face at the wheel and the woman still standing with her hands half-raised in a gesture of helpless explanation. I finally found my voice, whispering a shaky, "It's okay. They're here," to the 911 operator before ending the call. The operator's calm, disembodied presence had been my tether to sanity, and letting it go felt like cutting the last anchor in a storm. The next few minutes were a humbling, surreal exchange under the unforgiving brightness of the lights. I had to roll down my window fully, the cool night air hitting my wet cheeks. I had to explain, through hiccuping sobs, that it was all a mistake. The lead officer, a man with kind eyes and a weary demeanor, listened patiently as the mechanic, her name was Maria, reiterated her story. "See," Maria said, her voice earnest as she pointed at the back of my car. "Look." The officer walked to the rear of my sedan. He pulled out his flashlight and clicked it on. I watched in the side mirror as the beam illuminated my left brake light. I saw it then, a rapid, irregular flicker. Not a steady glow, but a frantic, stuttering blink, exactly as she described. A tiny, mundane electrical fault that had nearly unraveled everything. The officer nodded, clicking off his flashlight. He came back to my window. "She's telling the truth, ma'am. It's a pretty bad short. You're lucky she saw it. It's a real hazard." Lucky. The word was so absurd it almost made me laugh. I felt anything but lucky. I felt stripped raw, foolish, and overwhelmingly exhausted. Maria approached slowly, now that the officers had given a nonverbal all-clear. She stopped a few feet from my door. "I am so sorry," she said again, her voice soft with sincerity. "I can't even imagine how scared you must have been. I was worried about you. I got a daughter, too. I'd want someone to tell me." That was the final blow that broke down the last of my defenses. "I've got a daughter, too." She wasn't a monster. She was a mother, a mechanic, a person who saw potential danger and, in her own way, had tried to do the right thing. The tears came again, but they were different now. Cleansing. "No," I managed to say, my voice thick. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I saw you following and my mind went to the worst place." We looked at each other, two strangers bound together by a terrifying, ridiculous misunderstanding, and a shared, unspoken language of motherhood. The officers, seeing the situation was defused, offered to wait while I collected myself. It was only then that I remembered Lily. I turned in my seat. She was still huddled under her blanket, her eyes wide, watching the entire exchange. The fear was still there, but it was now mixed with confusion. "It's okay, baby," I said, my voice finally finding its true warmth again. "It's all okay. The lady, her name is Maria. She was trying to help us. She's a good person. Mommy just got really scared." Maria knelt down so she was at eye level with the window, giving Lily a small, gentle wave. "Hey, sweetie. You are one super brave kid. Your mom is a really good driver." A tiny smile touched Lily's lips. The officers left after I assured them I was okay to drive the last few miles to my parents. Maria offered to follow me just to make sure we got there safe, but I politely declined. We had both had enough of being on the same road for one night. As I finally pulled away from Big Mike's, the flickering brake light casting an erratic pulse in my rearview mirror, the world seemed to have reset, but I had changed. The paralyzing fear was gone, replaced by a profound, trembling gratitude and a lesson etched deep into my soul. The lesson wasn't about vigilance or stranger danger. It was about the fragile line between perception and reality. It was about how a kind intention, poorly communicated, can curdle into terror. And conversely, how a moment of human connection can dissolve a nightmare. I drove the last few miles slowly, the events replaying in my mind not as a horror story, but as a strange, dark fable. When I finally pulled into my parents' driveway, the warm yellow light from the kitchen window felt more precious than ever. I got out, walked around to Lily's door, and hugged her tighter than I ever had before, not out of fear, but out of a renewed, fierce love for the simple, miraculous fact of our safety. And the first thing I told my bewildered parents wasn't about a monster. It was about a mechanic named Maria, and the day we learned that sometimes, the things that scare us the most are just shadows cast by a flickering light.